Okay, so have you guys ever heard like a video, right, or watched a video, and it pretty much tells the whole sermon, like the preacher's about to preach? That's that video, okay? As we kind of conclude our series on parables, we look at last week, right, where Pastor Scott preached an amazing word on God's love. Man, how many of you guys know there's nothing like the love of God? Nothing like it. In his sermon, though, he talked about how he almost let Sharice die. That was pretty unfortunate. But then he went on to talk about how God relentlessly pursues us because he loves us that much. And he told 3 parables about the lost and how God's love cares for the lost. And he's looking to reach out to who he can get and how he celebrates it. And how we should relentlessly pursue God's love in return. How many of you guys know there's no better way to pursue God's love than when we make him a foundation of our lives and we build our lives around him? It's a big deal. And so the Bible backs up what I'm saying. When in 1 Corinthians 3:11, it says, "For no one can lay a foundation other than that which is laid, which is in Christ Jesus." So what it does is, this word is basically saying, right, it has this idea of when you're going to build a house, okay, you want to look for a foundation that's hard, that's sturdy, and that's going to hold your house up, right? And so that's what the title of my message is today. It's what's your house built on? And man, that's a valid question, because at the end of this, I want to have you guys really asking yourself, what exactly is my foundation of my life built on? And so that actually brings us into a parable that Jesus taught. So to kind of give you guys a background of this parable, right? Jesus, he's preaching this long word, right, by this mountaintop. And it's actually called the Sermon of the Mount, by the way. And so what's happening is he's preaching this from like Matthew 5 to like the end of Matthew 7. So I would imagine it's like a 2-hour message, right? And so he touches a lot of concepts too. Prayer, how you should treat your neighbor, how you should love your enemy. And he's just going on, right? How to pretty much be a follower of Jesus, how to be a Christian, right? And people are just going for a long time, right? And so what Jesus does is he caps it off with a way only Jesus would, right? He tells another one of these story illustrations, right? Imagine that. It's some solid teaching, right? And then he comes out after a while and just says, "There was a man." Wait, what are you talking about, right? And that's where they were, right? And so this time the story he tells a story that we call, right? Because I don't think he had a name for stories back then. I feel like, honestly, he would literally just say stuff and people would be like, "Man, what are we going to call this one?" Right? And so they called this one after a while, right? At least in my Bible it says this. It's called the parable, right? The story illustration of the foolish and wise builder. Okay? And so he gathers them all together and he says this. He says in Matthew 7:24, he says, "Everyone then who hears these words of mine and does them will be like a wise man who built his house on rock." Right? He's saying, man, all the things that I've taught you, if you actually follow all of these things, it's like you're actually building a house on solid rock. That's the sturdiest thing you can get, right? And so he brings up this idea, right, that a foundation only comes by hearing his word. How many of you guys knew that before coming in today? That, man, you can kind of graze through his word, but then there's actually having a solid foundation that's on his word. There's nothing like that. And so that composes of a lot of things, right? You actually come with a mentality to hear God's word, right? The decisions that you make in life are made by his word, the whole thing, right? Just not just some of it, the whole word, right? And then, man, I think this is probably the most important thing, that you know that your identity and value is actually determined by what God told you through his word instead of what others have told you and what you might have told yourself. That's key, right? And some people would argue this is most important. They don't just hear the word, but they do it too. Those 4 things are like building a house on a solid foundation that nothing can really shake, right? But then he says this, right? And I want you guys to catch this. He says there's another way you can do it too. And so it says this, "But everyone who hears these words," is that up on the screen? Okay, cool. Anyone who hears these words of mine and does not put them into practice is like a foolish man who built his house on sand. People think, man, that's not right, right? That doesn't make any sense. Why would you do that, right? How many of you guys know sand is a weak foundation to build your house on? Raise your hand. Yeah, this is class. School's not over. But how many of you guys know people do it anyway? As a matter of fact, can we get that on the screen for anybody who's taking notes back there? Sand is a weak foundation to build a house on. It's soft. It's not really strong. It's not really sturdy, right? But people do it anyway, right? We build our life on the sports we play sometimes. Some of us, we build our life on the grades we get in school. Some of us, we build our life on the high scores we get in video games, computer games, you name it. World record in sports. Some of us build our life on our popularity at school. What people think about us. And some of us, we build our life on whoever we're dating at the time. You know what the funny thing about sand is? And something I never really thought about before. But sand is really just fragments of rock. There's little pieces of rock in there, right? It's just rock ground up, right? And so, a lot of times, we're the same way when we come to church, especially a lot that maybe grew up in church or people that, have been going to church for a while now, is we have the tendency to pick pieces of the word, right, that we think are good ideas, right? But we don't, build our lives on the whole thing, right? We say, God, you can have these parts of my life, but not these parts. I don't want that. God, you can have this area of my life, but not this part. You can say, God, I'm cool if you answer my prayer. I'm cool with that. But I don't have to answer the calling that you have on my life. All right? You say, God, maybe I won't cuss at school. But when it comes to talking trash about somebody else in the youth group, that's off limits. Right? Why do I put these? Okay, I'll do the COF top 10, right? For some of you guys, it's only top 8 because you guys are pulling parts out. But here's the deal. I'll do the COF top 10. But that one, number 7, I don't like that one that says that, maybe there's a couple songs in my playlist I might have to delete. That's a little different, Then it becomes COF top 9 or it becomes COS top 2 for some of you guys. Some of you guys become COF top 0. Right? But here's the key thing about building your house on sand. Some of us, building a house on sand is all we know. Why? Because it's all we've been taught. We don't know any better. Maybe our parents showed us that building your house on sand was a good idea, right? Maybe, God is kind of important or he's in the top 3 of importance, but number 1 has to be your success. What job you get in the future. How much money you make. How much people like you, right? Maybe some of you guys were raised to think that, the most important thing in life is not having a relationship with God, but making sure that you have a relationship with somebody else and that you're not left alone in life. Maybe that's how you were taught. And see, when that happens, then you realize you can be going to your church your whole life and build your house on sand. You can be in Salt and build your house on sand. You can be on the worship team, giving it all you have for God, doing the worship, right? Even crying out to God, but build your house on sand. You can even be a pastor and build your house on sand. Be a businessman, build your house on sand. Make tons of dollars, build your house on sand. Right? How is that possible? Right? Probably thinking, how can you do that? But because the reality is, you can build your house on sand and everything actually seem all right in life. You're probably thinking, Jeremy, how is that possible? Well, it's because the reality is the foundations we have in our life are usually hidden and only really show themselves when a storm comes. If you can get that on the screen. That's a big deal, right? In the sunny times, you can build your house on sand and it won't move. But see, when it starts to get windy, right? When it starts to get a little rainy, then it's different, right? Huge deal. And the reality is, and this is a key thing. When you're building your house on sand, you're not really even thinking about the storm, right? But storms will always come inevitably, right? Whether today, whether tomorrow, it can happen any day, any time, any place. Storms are gonna come. It's how life works, right? And so, man, we look at what happens to this sandy house, right? It says this. It says, and the rain fell, and the floods came, and the winds blew and beat against that house, and it fell, and great was the fall of it. You see, when the storms come in life, we don't know what to do, right? By then, it's kind of too late, right? We don't have a chance to go, maybe I should tear my house down, or maybe I should move now. Storm's coming, right? Man, all your assets are in your house now, right? Everything that's important to you is in that house. You're not just going to let it go. You're going to just have to sit in there and hope that the storm doesn't knock your house over. But it says, man, eventually it's going to beat on your house enough times where it's going to fall, right? You see, the reality about a person's house is your whole identity is in your house. So what happens is when you put your house and you build it on sand, your identity goes away with the storm too. Right? When you get injured, right? When you don't make the sports team. When you don't get the grades you want. And so that means maybe you won't be able to get into the school you wanted to get into. When you lose your popularity at school. When you lose a family member or friend to sickness, or they're in the hospital. Or, my favorite, when you get into a bad breakup. All right? That'll get you to come up at the altar real quick. Then we say this, right? We go, God, why is all this happening to me? Who here has ever asked that question in life? I have, right? We say, God, why is all this happening to me? But man, I wonder what a builder thinks when the storm comes and knocks his house over. Does he go, man, God, why is this happening to me? Dude, you built your house on sand. What do you expect, right? Man, I always make this joke. I will never share my raincoat, right? When me and Natalia first used to date, I used to go like this, I'm never going to share my raincoat, so you better make sure you have it, right? And she would go, and she would go, that's so mean, right? If you guys know her, she goes, yeah, it's so mean. And I go, no, that's not mean, right? And I'm very analytical, right? So I said to myself, listen, okay? It's not my fault, okay? If you didn't prepare for the storms of life, see, I got to preach to you now. All right, but no. Man, it's not my fault. And I always preach this. Like that's like the biggest word I'll ever preach is, man, bring in a rain jacket when it's cold outside. Because I'm anemic, right? My fingers start turning colors and stuff, right? And so, man, you better bring your raincoat because, man, don't come complaining to me when I got mine on. And I'm saying, man, listen, okay, I got to keep warm, right? And if you guys have been around me long enough, you guys will hear me say, hey, it is what it is, right? After a while, it is what it is. So a lot of times, man, I feel like we're asking God, we're saying, God, why is this all happening to me? And he's going, man, it is what it is. You built your house on sand, what do you expect when the storm comes and knocks it over, right? But then it says the fall was great. How many of you guys know that, man, when the storm comes and your house is built on sand, it's not a little fall. It's not a fall that makes you just go, oh, man, like, that kind of sucks, right? No. How many of you guys know, man, you'll be depressed now. Now you're going to be in a place of, like, supreme anxiety. Man, you're going to feel like in life you don't know what to do, right? But the reality is, man, you don't have to build your house on sand, right? And so let's look at what happens when your house is built on rock. This is a big deal, right? It says, and the rain fell, and the floods came, and the winds blew. You're probably embarrassed right now, huh? I knew you were embarrassed. All right, and the winds blew and beat on that house, but it did not fall because it was founded on the rock. You hear that? It says it didn't fall because it was founded on the rock. It's not that it didn't fall because it was built well, right? How many of you guys know there's only a certain way we can build our lives, right? But the reality is, if it's not built on rock, it doesn't matter. Right? You see, but man, did anybody catch that? Just because the house was built on rock didn't mean that the storms didn't come. Man, you guys didn't get that. You see, how well we built our house doesn't change the circumstances that may happen in our lives. Storm's still going to come. The storm did all the same stuff. It said that, man, the wind still blew, right? The flood still came. The rain still came. But it said, man, the house that was founded on rock didn't fall. How many of you guys know, no matter how tough things get in life, no matter how badly you get hurt, no matter how tough your grades may get, you might have to go and study a little bit. That's a little different, right? No matter how things get at home, when your house is built on rock, it's not going to fall. When your house is built on the Word of God, it's not going to fall. How many of you guys need to receive that right now? I'm not going to forget this time. Lily, if you can come up real quick. How many of you guys need to know that? To some of you guys, this seems taboo, right? Because, man, for some of you guys in this moment, you're probably thinking, man, my life's good. Jeremy, I don't know what the trip is about all this sand and rock stuff. I think my life is cool, have a little bit of word here, a little bit of my opinion here, right? It's not that big of a deal, right? But the reality is, the storm's going to come. It could come tomorrow. Come on Saturday. It can come years from now. But the storm is going to come. And I just want to ask in this moment, right? Rather, I want you to ask yourself in this moment, what is your house built on today? If you can just leave that up on the screen. I didn't really want to have a long word today because I really wanted this to be more of a time to come and ask God to reveal to you what your house is really built on today. Yeah. And so what I want to do is I want to invite the adult leaders, the lids, to kind of just come up. And on your way, if you can grab next to Josh over there, there's a packet of COF Youth Top 10s. I want you to grab a handful per person, but don't give to the students yet. For the students, you guys sitting down, we've been doing this thing called